Story 1. My mom and I recently watched one of those 2020 shows, and they were talking about a woman who went out drinking one night and was never seen again. She had gone back to one guy's apartment, but hotel footage showed her leaving shortly after arriving, and the guy in the apartment swore he didn't do anything to her. But they kept interviewing this one guy, who was the last person to see her alive. They stopped at a gas station, and he claims that she started talking to another guy, got in his car, and left. He played the whole "if I had only known, I wouldn't have let her go" act with tears and everything. Well, there's footage of him at his job a couple of days later, and the footage is very generic. He has a cooler on a rolling cart, and he's putting it in a freezer. He worked for a food production company. When the police interviewed his boss, they asked to see all of her footage, and she obliged. When they got to that part of the footage, him putting the cooler in the freezer, she told the police to stop. She said that those coolers were used to store granola bars, and there was zero reason for those bars to be put in the freezer. The girl's body was in there. He took it out back and burned almost everything in a barrel down the alley a couple of days later. But it was before the police had seen the footage. And he had bleached his entire van before police could search it. Story 2. The dating game. The concept appeared innocent enough. A woman chooses a bachelor out of the 3 available contestants, and they go on a date. However, in 1978, the game turned dark when serial killer Rodney Alcala was nominated to be a contestant and actually won the game. The contestant refused to go out with him on the date because she thought he was creepy afterward. She dodged a bullet. Story 3. This surveillance video of Timothy Pitson shows him and his mother checking into a hotel. In reality, it is shortly before his mother kills herself and leaves behind a note saying Timothy is safe but will never be found. He is still missing. Story 4. The television show The Willis Family had 2 seasons on TLC. The father was very controlling of his 12 children and wife and gave off unsettling vibes. I was shocked to find out that he had been sexually abusing his own daughters for years, with the oldest saying that it started when she was 3. All 12 children were homeschooled and participated in dance and wrestling, but only with each other. They were very isolated from other people. He was also strict about his daughters saving themselves for marriage, even though he was abusing them. There is a clip from the show of him discussing all the children building houses on his property so his future grandchildren would be close by. It was like he was setting up his next victims for when his daughters grew up. The worst part is the mother knew for a while but did not do anything about it. It was a family friend who eventually reached out to authorities, which led to his arrest and a sentence of 40 years. It is very unsettling to see clips of the show, knowing what was happening behind closed doors. Story 5. The James Bulger video. I'm on mobile and I'm a bit lazy, but it's a seemingly innocent video of a 2-year-old boy, James, holding the hand of an older child. James was tortured and murdered by 2 10-year-old kids who led him away from his mother for a split second at a shopping center. Story 6. The song in Marie sings in All Dogs Go to Heaven is about wanting a loving home. While recording, the voice actress Judith Barcy kept crying. Her home life was awful. Her father was abusive to both her and her mother and would often threaten to kill or hurt them. Judith died before the movie came out. She and her mother were killed by her father, and then he killed himself. She was 10. Story 7. What about the video that was on Tosh.0 where there were 2 girls and the father tied them in a playful way to the bed? But it was really like a pedophile tutorial on how to do this to kids so the pedophile could do what they wanted. Tosh said on the show it was creepy, and the guy's whole YouTube channel was weird. A few months later, the Federal Bureau of Investigation or something investigated it, and it turned out the guy was a pedophile abusing the girls and exploiting them on his kid's YouTube channel. That video looked innocently creepy until you find out the real story. Story 8. One day, I saw a news report about a woman's body found in a lake. The police were still looking for the body. They interviewed a man who said, "That could have been someone's mother." A few hours later, they found out the body was that man's mother. Story 9. I'm from the Czech Republic, and on YouTube, there's a video of a Who Wants to Be a Millionaire contender, Victor Kalavoda. He's a pretty smart guy and performs very well. However, later, he became one of the most famous mass murderers in the history of our country. That "Who Wants to Be a Millionaire" video always gives me goosebumps. Story 10. Redditors take a picture of themselves on a hike. In the background is the unconscious body of a person who was severely injured the night before. Story 11. This video features former Officer Craig Pyre giving safety advice in response to the murder of Cara Knott. Pyre had murdered Knott by luring her to an isolated area just off the freeway. Story 12. Carmen Miranda, the famous singer and dancer of the 1940s, performed on The Jimmy Durante Show on August 4, 1955. At the end of her performance, she briefly dropped to her knee but popped back up afterward. She later died of a massive heart attack that same night. Story 13. This interview about a murder with Stephen McDaniel, in which he, her neighbor, ended up being the one who kidnapped and dismembered her. It's horrifying looking back and seeing his nervous movements when they bring her up, and even when they eventually find her body and he goes crazy. Story 14. This video of a Russian influencer. At her birthday party at a swimming pool, she had the idea of pouring dry ice into the water for the visual effect. 3 people died from intoxication due to the carbon dioxide. Story 15. I don't know about innocent, but if you cut out the ending, the video leading up to Bud Dwyer's suicide seems so normal. Just another guy on television getting harassed by reporters over the latest controversy. If it had cut there, you could air it on the evening news and nobody would know someone died less than 20 seconds later. Just disturbing. Story 16. These teenagers found a suitcase in Seattle by the sea while filming a TikTok, only to discover later that the suitcase contained 2 bodies. Story 17. There was a celebrity in the United Kingdom called Jimmy Savile who presented many British Broadcasting Corporation programs in the 1970s, especially ones with a younger audience. He did a campaign for seatbelt awareness and was a patron for many charities for the vulnerable. He was probably the most loved celebrity for decades. After his death, he was revealed as the country's worst child sex offender who used his fame and proximity to children to abuse them. Any picture or television footage of him near kids was probably shot just before or after he had assaulted someone. Story 18. Actress Melissa Benoist was on Jimmy Fallon in 2016. She told a story about a time she fell and tore up half her face and one of her eyes. She made jokes about it and no one really thought about it. Last year, she revealed that one of her exes was very violent when they were together. She revealed that the story she told on Jimmy Fallon was a cover-up story. The real story is that her husband at the time had thrown an iPhone in her face. Story 19. This video of a band performing in a bar in Thailand. Minutes later, the entire place catches fire and more than 60 people are dead. The band's name is Burn, and the song they are singing is Linkin Park's In the End. Story 20. Dr. Nasser's sports medicine videos. He is one of the doctors for United States Gymnastics and has had many videos on his website demonstrating various sports medicine techniques and treatments. It looks professional on the surface. The thing is, some of his techniques are completely fabricated. Some techniques he demonstrated on video involved inappropriate and invasive actions on young girls under the guise of it being for their health, and sometimes directly in front of their parents, sometimes while aroused. Watch Athlete A on Netflix if you want the story on this individual. Story 21. Maybe not that innocent to begin with, but extra creepy knowing the truth. A video of an African gray parrot named Bud saying, "Don't shoot." He witnessed his owner, Martin Durham, being murdered by his wife. Bud also mimicked both sides of verbal fights, alternating between a male and female voice. I believe the parrot testified in court. The wife was convicted. Edit. Bud did not testify. Sorry to get your hopes up. He was, however, a useful witness during the investigation. Story 22. This isn't really terrifying, but it always gives me the creeps to hear it. It's a video of Alessandro Morici, who was a castrato singer. This is him singing in 1902, I believe, and he was in his 40s. If you don't know what a castrato is, basically they used to be really popular in opera and other genres of music centuries ago, mostly in place of female singers. Castrato is a male singer who has been castrated before puberty. Basically, if a young boy had a high voice in choir or something along those lines, They would be castrated while young so that they wouldn't lose their ability to reach the high pitches because their voices wouldn't drop due to puberty. Honestly, the recording completely creeps me out because it was such an awful thing in the history of opera. And it's so creepy that only a little under 100 years ago did the last official castrato die. Thousands of boys died while being castrated or after, and this recording is absolutely haunting. Story 23. Chris Watts pleaded for the return of his pregnant wife and daughters. He confessed to killing them all the following week. Story 24. Fetch with Rough Man is a fairly obscure PBS kids show I liked to watch as a kid. The episode Rough Pigs Out and Has a Whale of a Time features orca trainer Dawn Brancho, who was unfortunately killed by an orca 5 months after the episode aired. Story 25. Fire at a nursing home in Sydney back in 2011. Television reporter interviews one of the nurses, Roger Dean, who tells of helping get residents out. Then the police announce he was the one who set the fire to start with to try to cover up his theft of $85 worth of prescription drugs. 11 people died in the fire. Story 26. In 2016, YouTube creator Brittany Louise Taylor uploaded a video titled, "I'm Engaged and Pregnant." She talks about a man she had met on Tinder and that she is now pregnant. After the baby was born, it emerged that this man was never in love with her, but was just pretending. He had targeted her for human trafficking and had deliberately gotten her pregnant in order to sell her baby. With that information, it's really scary how he looks at her at the end of the video and how he treats her in other clips on her YouTube channel. Fortunately, she escaped the situation and got a restraining order. The scariest thing about this is that he didn't go to prison and went on to impregnate and marry another Instagram user, who has since disappeared from social media. Be careful when you swipe right, kids. If you want to find out more about the story, Brittany has a book called A Sucky Love Story. It's badly written but fascinating. Edited to add, her son is also safe. They live with her mom in Arizona. Story 27. Columbine Senior Yearbook Photo 1999, where the shooters are making gun signs at the camera just weeks before the shooting took place. Look in the far upper left of the image. Story 28. Next-door neighbor security footage shows a disturbingly calm Chris Watts loading up his work truck in the morning with the bodies of his recently strangled pregnant wife and 2 young children to dispose of them. Absolutely disturbing. Story 29. If I remember correctly, World Wrestling Entertainment did an in memoriam for Chris Benoit very soon after he died. A little too soon. Before it was announced Benoit killed his wife and child and then himself. Story 30. The movie Blow Up is essentially this, but as a film. Spoilers. It's about a guy who takes a picture of a woman at a park, and that woman demands the picture. She follows him around. She seduces him, makes him think she loves him, then takes the picture and leaves. He kept a copy. He enlarges it so much it takes up an entire wall. And then he finally sees what she was doing in those bushes. He goes to the bushes afterward and finds the dead body she was hiding when he took her picture. Story 31. Can't find a video of it, but this happened in 2004. A man named John Sharp lived in the suburb of Mornington in Victoria, Australia, with his wife Anna and their 2-year-old daughter Gracie. One day Anna, who was 5 months pregnant with a boy, and Gracie suddenly vanished. John Sharp made a tearful plea for his wife to come home, saying that she and Gracie were missed and he loved them both very much. A few days later, the police charged a man with the murders of Anna and Gracie. That man was John Sharp. John Sharp shot his wife in the head with a bow and arrow, killing her. He then shot his daughter. The first shot didn't kill the 2-year-old Gracie, so he pulled the arrow out of her head and shot her again. He dismembered the bodies, bagged the parts, and dumped them at the landfill. He had initially buried the bodies in the backyard but excavated them after becoming worried he would be found out. He even went so far as to send flowers to Anna's mother overseas, pretending Anna was still alive, when in reality, she was buried in the backyard. He received a 35-year sentence, and from what I've heard, he has spent most of it in solitary confinement because every other prisoner has tried to kill him. Story 32. A popular 18-year-old Counter-Strike global offensive YouTuber uploaded a reveal of the supercar he had just bought. His Steam account, containing around $100,000 of in-game items, was banned 6 months later, causing him to have a serious mental breakdown. 2 months after his ban, he drove this car 100 miles per hour down a San Diego highway the wrong way in an attempt to commit suicide. He crashed head-on into a van, killing himself, a mother, and her 12-year-old daughter. Story 33, the last Twitch stream of Wreckful. He jokingly comments about whether it's all a simulation and maybe you get out when you die. He asks if he should try his luck to chat. You can tell he is glancing at his balcony a few times. He jumped from it some time later. It gets even darker when you learn about his past. His older brother committed suicide as well. It seems he mentioned it a month or so before doing it. There is also a good YouTube documentary on him. It's extremely well done and a good watch regardless of whether you knew who he was. Story 34. Recent Britney Spears TikTok and all the videos she posted. I am not a fan myself, to be honest, but as a person who doesn't know much about her, it felt weird and somewhat awkward to watch them. I read the comments and saw people saying that she's asking for help through all these videos.